Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here once again, and today I've got a brand new Outriders video for you. This one is going to be touching on all the things I've learned over the course of my playthrough so far, and there are a lot of tips and tricks that I wanted to include because I feel like people are sleeping on some different features of this game that are very helpful. So if you enjoy the video, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Helps me out, shows that you guys want to see more content, and keeps you informed as I do post videos pretty much every day. So I'm just going to jump into it. Now, first things first, get to know your class. This is one of the things that most people don't realize with this game. If you've played multiple characters, now you start to see playing the Devastator, the Trickster, the Pyromancer, and the Technomancer all feel so very different. The weapons you use are going to be different. The skills obviously are different. Your playstyle has to change based off of what class you're running. And you might not enjoy some of the classes. I found that some are more enjoyable for me personally than others. Get to know your class and don't feel bad if you jump into a different class and it doesn't feel very good right away, because you gotta kind of change what you're doing a lot more than you do in most other games. Something like Destiny, you can switch classes and the game still plays the same pretty much, but this game you gotta play near, far, mid-range. All of that kind of stuff is going to be changing dramatically between the classes. So keep that in mind as you jump in. Another thing, don't be afraid to craft early and often. I know a lot of us are used to in games hoarding your materials for the end game. Unnecessary. You're going to get a ton of leather, a ton of some of the other materials going into the late game iron, and they become kind of obsolete with regards to upgrading your end game gear. So upgrade, make the game a lot easier. Mod your gear as well. You want to have the best mods on your armor and your weapons at all times. You're not going to run through all of your resources. You don't have to worry about that. Make sure you're doing that at every single checkpoint that you're able to, because it's going to make the game feel a lot better. Your abilities are going to feel a lot better. Your gameplay is going to be tremendously different as long as you have all your mods on, as long as you're upgrading your gear to your current level. So don't be afraid to do that. I know, again, a lot of people like to hoard their resources. Don't do that in this game if at all possible. You are going to get guaranteed legendary gear from doing all 10 hunts, all 10 bounties. So after you've completed the campaign, or even before, so if you're struggling a little bit, or you want to head into expeditions and you've kind of hit a cap, farm those legendaries. You can do all of the hunts over and over again. Some people are even turning down the world tier for the first 9 hunts and then finishing the 10th on their max tier so they can get that legendary at their own world tier. Now, this is kind of a cheeky thing, and I don't really recommend it because you're going to miss out on a lot of the gear that you acquire, like your random drops, if you lower your world tier too much. So I'm still doing all of them on world tier 15, but that is something to keep in mind because it does make life a lot easier if you get legendaries. Now, for weapons, legendary gear are going to drop with various mods. If you don't like a mod on a legendary piece of gear, swap it out. You don't feel bad about having to swap out legendary gear mods. Don't feel bad about dismantling legendary gear if it has a mod you like but you don't like the feel of the gun. They are going to be drastically different feels of the guns if you don't snipe, if you don't use a shotgun. So don't be afraid to do that. That is absolutely huge. Another thing that I've seen quite a bit, cover. You don't need to use cover all that often with most characters. From what I've seen, a little bit with the Technomancer it can help, especially when you're playing at range. But other than that, you're going to want to be in the action at all times. In, out, in, out. With the Trickster, you're going to want to all the way in the Devastator, and then the Pyromancer, you're going to want to be in the mid tier. But you should be using either your skill leech or weapon leech to heal yourself as you're fighting, abilities to heal yourself as you're fighting, but cover is for the enemies only. You don't want to be using too much cover. If you sit back and cover, the enemies are going to grenade you out, are going to push you. You're going to be in for a world of hurt. That's not the way to play this game. It's not the way it feels like it was meant to be played. It's a cover shooter for the enemies only. So don't rely on cover too much, except when you're trying to just heal or escape danger, or if you have enemies who are too tanky for you to deal with consistently. So those are some things to keep in mind, as well as make sure that you are grabbing your rewards from not only the accolades, but most especially the world tiers. Every world tier, you get a new piece of gear, and at level 12, you start getting guaranteed legendary gear dropping from your world tier level ups. That's absolutely huge. It does make the game a lot easier once you start to get those legendaries to put into your builds. As far as your skill tree, pay attention to your class tree when you're going through it, because you want to look at your end goal and see what skills you ultimately want at the end. I have a Phoenix Nestling build for my Pyromancer where I self-revive when I'm playing solo. Comes in clutch, and you definitely want to spec out for those specific perks that you want. Look through all of the perks on the top, middle, and bottom trees of whatever class you're playing. But remember, you can reset your tree for free. A lot of other games, it costs some kind of resources in order to reset your skill tree. Reset them early and often and experiment with your different builds, because that's going to allow you to find whatever suits your play style the best. You're going to find the skills that you really want to use the most, and that's absolutely vital, because some of the skills early on don't feel that great. But once you start getting class points, once you start getting mods for those skills, they are very different from what you were playing with early on in the game. So if you're not a fan of a skill, but you get a couple pieces that you really like, a couple mods for that skill, try it out, change up your class tree, and see how it feels then. Because in the early game, a lot of things are very squishy, but later on, you're going to want to be doing heavy damage to a lot of these different enemies. And to do so, you have to build out your character very well. Otherwise, you're just going to be in for a world of hurt. When you're going through the campaign, remember that firepower and your armor point amount is very important. However, as you get to the late game, there's other factors that are more important. You want to level your guns up all the way to your max level if possible. However, remember things like armor piercing, things like crit damage, status power, long range damage, etc. All of that matters just as much, if not more, as your overall firepower. So just because a weapon has a lower firepower than another weapon does not mean it's a worse weapon in the long run. Now, armor is a little bit different. You're going to want to go for your max armor. However, again, they have different perks like max health, status power, long range damage. So if you're not running a long range build, some of those armor sets are not going to be super important for you. So remember that. Don't just look at your maximum armor amount or maximum firepower and think that's the end all be all with building your skills or builds. And I just wanted to leave you with, enjoy the story. Don't rush it if you don't have to. Make sure you do all the side missions, all of the hunts, all of the bounties. Everything in this game is replayable. You'll get to exhibitions eventually, but the story is actually better than I expected when I first dove in this game. It's very good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Pay attention. Talk to all the different characters. They give you a lot of little pieces of information in the different dialogue options that you might miss if you just rush through that. So that's what I would recommend. The game is a lot of fun. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. I'm going to have some builds here in the near future. I hope you stick around and enjoy those as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the like button on my video. If you like it, share it, all that kind of good stuff. But my name is JoPaWrites, and I'll catch you all later.